Yeah, my name is Mitchell Pearson, and I sitting in church today and had a message from the Lord and couldn't get up and give it, and because I was too scared about what to say and how people would look at me, and but or if it was even the right time, and I struggle with that a lot. And God said, you know what? Use Facebook and give it that way. So I don't know who is going out to, but I know that God gave me this message, and like Jeremiah said, I tried to keep it trapped up, but it was burning inside of me, and so it's got to come out. So the first part we'll be reading from is Exodus 14. Exodus 14 verse 21. And I want to ask you something. How many times did God part the sea for the Israelites? Plenty of times we hear about the time that God parted the sea for them as they were crossing over the Red Sea, when they were running from the Egyptians. And we're going to read about that here in Exodus 14. Starting in verse 21. It says, and Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon dry ground, and waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on the left. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all the Pharaoh's horses and his chariots and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, and upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength, and the morning appeared. And the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, and all the hosts of Pharaoh came into the sea after them, and there remained not so much as one of them. Now this is a story that we remember. This is a story that most of us as Christians remember, as far as how many times did he part in the sea. When we mention part in the sea, we remember Moses doing it. Remember Moses, that he was a person parting the sea, but he wasn't. And so again, and he was doing that. Why did God was a person parting the sea? He was using Moses. See, but plenty of times here we find a few years later, it's about 45 years later, we find Moses dead. We see that Joshua has been left in charge of the Israelites, and so they're about to cross over into the promised land, and Joshua's kind of unsure about who he is right now. He's been a leader in the tribe of Israel for 40 years, but he is still struggling about who he is and how he's going to fill these shoes that Moses left behind him. And in the whole first chapter of the book of Joshua is God reaffirming who Joshua is, telling Joshua who he is, because Joshua doesn't know. Like plenty of us don't know who we are. We have to be told who we are and reaffirmed. We know those kind of people, and some people take it to a whole nother extreme, and it's a sickness in their life that if they don't have affirmation from other people, they don't believe they're anybody. And so, but when we base who we are and what we know that we are on what the Church says, then we don't have to struggle that way. But so here's Joshua, and he was struggling. And they're coming over. We're going to turn to Joshua chapter 3 and verse 5. It says, Joshua said unto the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. And here we miss plenty of things in our lives that because, well, why is God not working like this? Why is God not doing that? Well, why? Because we ain't sanctifying ourselves. We're not sanctifying ourselves. We just want to do what's just good enough to get into heaven. Oh, well, I don't think I'll go to hell for smoking. I don't think I'll go to hell for doing this. No, I don't believe you go to hell for doing it either. But why would you want to do it? Huh? Sanctify yourself. Set yourself apart. We're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world. And how does the world know something is different about us if we're acting just like them? So he said, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. You want to see wonders? Sanctify yourself. Allow the Lord to come inside of you and do a cleansing inside of you you never thought could be done before. And once that happens, you'll see something amazing change in your life. You'll see God start changing things in your life that you never thought could be changed. You'll see chains being broken off of you you never thought could be broken off of you. Verse 6. Joshua spake unto the priests, saying, take up the ark of the covenant and pass over before the people. And they took up the ark of the covenant and went before the people. And the Lord said unto Joshua, this day will I begin to magnify thee in the sight of all the Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so will I be with thee. We're going to come back to that, but I want y'all to remember that because that's very important. And so, thou shalt command the priests that bear the ark of the covenant, saying, when ye are come to the brink of the water of Jordan, ye shall stand in the Jordan. And Joshua said unto the children of Israel, come hither, and hear the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, hereby ye shall know that by the living God is among you, that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Hivites, and the Perizzites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Jebusites. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and all the earth passes over before you in the Jordan. Therefore now take you 12 tribes out of the 12 tribes, 12 men out of the 12 tribes of Israel, out of every tribe, a man. And it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters, that they come down from above, and that they shall stand upon a heap. And it came to pass, when the people were moved from their tents to pass over from the Jordan, that the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and as they that bear the ark were come unto Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped into the brim of water, for Jordan overfloweth all his banks at the time of harvest, that the waters which came down from above stood and rose up upon a heap very far from the city of Adam, that is beside Zaratan. And those that came down toward the sea of the plain, and even the salt sea filled, and were cut off, and the people passed over right against Jericho. And the priests that bear the ark of the covenant stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan. And all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were clean over Jordan. Now, people would tell you that this could have been caused naturally, and it just so happened that it happened naturally enough in a large enough area for a couple million people to cross over. And so for this to feasibly happen, it would have to be a stretch of about 2 miles. 2 miles. And so 2 miles dried up. Not water went away, but dried up. Like the ground. You ever seen low tide at the beach? It's not dry ground. It's wet sand. And so, but they went across on dry ground because they had to bring the animals across. And if the animals was trying to walk around on moist ground, they would lose all their animals. Especially the bottom of a lake. You know, the bottom of the lakes I've been in, every one of them, you sink about 2 foot if you ain't careful. So they have to drag out swimming areas for it to swim in. So anyway, but why did he do this again? For the same reason he did it the first time. Was to establish that he was there for the children of Israel. They could have went around the Red Sea. If they would have ran the right direction, they could have went around the Red Sea. They didn't have, but he led them towards the Red Sea where he could part the Red Sea the first time. And they could have went around the Jordan River, went a different route, but they were directed towards this route. So he could show these people, this younger generation, because the older generation that had crossed over the Red Sea had all died off because they didn't know how to shut up and quit complaining. So when it came across the second time, the second generation, these people that were all kids coming across the Red Sea, they came to a point where they had to be reestablished that God was still with them, even though they were following a pillar of fire that was showing them where to go. They had to be reestablished that God was still with them. The same God that had took them out of Egypt was with them now. Because we are very short-sighted. If God's not doing something for me today, what is he doing? And while that is a shame, it's facts. That's just who we are. That's what we become. And it's what we were 4,000 years ago, and it's what we are today. We haven't changed. We haven't evolved. We're not special. We haven't gained anything or lost anything. We are the same people we were back in the Old Testament. If he's not doing for me now, what is he doing? And so God is really good at repeating himself. Really good at repeating himself. And so, remember what I told you? I wanted you to hold on to verse 7 in chapter 3, where he says, as I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. And this is Joshua talking. He had to share this with him. Look, this is what God told me. Why? Because in chapter 1 of Joshua, in verse 5, it says, as I was with Moses, so will I be with thee. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. Now this is the most common promise that I have found in the Word. I don't have an exact count, and I'm pretty sure that somebody does. I just haven't looked it up. But I've read, I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee, and you will be my people, and I will be your God, more than any other promise that I've ever seen in the Word. And it's so simple, and that's the only conditions there is. Be his people. He will be our God. He will never fail thee or forsake thee. He's never going to leave me. He's never going to forsake me. He's never going to say I'm not his. As long as I'm claiming him, I am his. And so, and also in chapter 1, he had to go over and say that God had to tell him, be strong and of good courage, 4 to 5 times in the first chapter, because Joshua was just like us. He didn't know who he was. He had been leading the military part of Israel for 40 years and still was struggling about who he was in Christ. And yet for some reason we think that we've been saved for a few days and we should get it all together. You know, we are supposed to grow. We are supposed to overcome. We are supposed to be better than we were yesterday. But at the same time, we're still going to struggle. We're going to struggle. But God is going to be there for us. Okay? God is going to be there for us to tell us that he was never going to leave us. He's never going to forsake us. And as he was with Moses, he will be with me. As he was with Joshua, he will be with me. As he was with David, he'll be with me. As he was with Paul, he'll be with me. And there's no denying that, because he's my God. And I ain't got to worry about the rest of it. I ain't got to be scared about what's happening. I ain't got to be scared about what may become of me, because I know that the Lord is with me. Now, and I understand, when I was sitting in church this morning, God gave me that. And he said, as I was with David, so will I be with you. And I started to cry and I started to weep, because I struggled with the same things that David struggled with, and the fleshly things that he struggled with. I can parallel with that, because I fought those demons, and the Lord has given me strength to finally come through on the other side of those demons. And yet I can still hear those demons pounding away in my head sometimes. But I know that I've already won them. And if I was to stay in that and believe what the devil tells me over what the Lord tells me, then I would not be an overcomer. I would not be a victor. I would not be blessed with favored Abraham, I would not be a child of the Most High God. I would be kicked down and hurt and lost and depressed, like we see plenty of our church people are. You don't want to know why the world don't want what we got? Because we ain't acting like we're something that the world needs. The world needs something that's happy. The Lord needs something with love just overflowing and going everywhere. We should have love. Brother Tommy taught something this morning in Sunday school that really just reached out to me. He said, wherever we go, the love of Christ should be pouring off of us so rich and so thick that nobody can deny the source of it. And we're missing that part. We're missing the part because we're so stuck on just doing just enough to get into heaven. Oh, well, I go to church and I believe in Jesus and I do this and I do that. But what are we doing? Do we really love him? That's all he asked for us. He asked that we love him. And so, do we love him? What are we doing to show that we love him? Are we lining our life with the whole part of the word or just the easy part? Are we believing him when he's up there parting the seas for us? Are we believing him in the valley as well? David said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. He didn't say, God, get me out of the valley of the shadow of death. He said, yea, though I walk through it, I need not fear anything, because God is with me. And I know that the same way, this is what he's talking about here. In that verse, as I was with Moses, so will I be with thee. And the reason he didn't have Joshua stretch out his hands, because I am sure that there were people in the Israelites that thought Moses was something special. They thought Moses had the special magic in the stick for some reason, because that's how lost we are. Know that God's the one doing it, but we'll tell ourselves, nah, Moses was the man with a stick. He's the guy that had it going on, and he's dead now. What are we going to do? So that's why God said, you know what? Had the priest take the Ark of the Covenant, which was the dwelling place of the Lord, take that into the middle, so they can not deny nor even kind of sidestep that God is the one parting the seas. Because I know there were, for a fact, that there were people, because people think that Benny Hinn's doing something, or who was Oral Roberts was doing something, or all these preachers, they're not doing nothing. God's doing it. God can use you the same way God's using them if you believe the same way they believe. They ain't no more a child of God than I am, or you are. God gives all gifts without repentance. He doesn't care. He gives you a gift and it's yours. It's yours. That's the reason we see rich people that are so evil. Why? Because they had been given a gift for finances and the foundations of the world, and God didn't take that away from them just because they weren't living the way he wanted to. He didn't do that. That gift was theirs. People have gifts of special faith. People have gifts of tongues and interpretations. And, we can ignore it or whatever, but, Corinthians talks about the spiritual gifts. I don't know where y'all's beliefs are at, but read Corinthians and read about the spiritual gifts and read about how it worked in the church of Acts, and then come talk to me about whether they're here or not. But those gifts are given to people. Joshua was a born leader. And what I've come to find out, many born leaders, the best ones, don't know if they're leaders or not. Joshua was doing all he knew how to do and was holding on with all he knew how to hold on with. And the only thing that was keeping him established was the words that God gave him. The word that God gave us in the Bible. I love one of my favorite verses. My pastor has pounded into me and pounded into me and pounded into me. Is God is no respecter of persons. What he's done, and that pretty much means what he's done for me, he can do for you. What he did for Joshua right here, he can do for you. He is holding you down. He is allowing you to be able to work with him. If you just give him the opportunity to be able to work through you. We should sanctify ourselves, because tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. I've heard it preached and from the mountaintops for the past few years that God's fixing to start a revival in the church. The church, not your church. The church, there is a difference. So in the church, and it's going to shake the very foundations of the world. But I believe this verse holds the key to it. Because it says, sanctify yourselves for tomorrow, which means what is to come. Something that is to come. Not a literal tomorrow. The Lord will do wonders among you. But it takes us setting ourselves apart and allowing God to work through us. Like verse 8 says, thou shalt command the priests that bear the ark of the covenant, saying, when are ye on the brink of the water, ye shall stand in the Jordan. And Joshua said unto the children of Israel, come hither and hear the words of the Lord your God. When they heard the word of God, they immediately went out and did it. They didn't stop and change it. They immediately went out and did it. They didn't say, oh, well, when I get around to it. No, they took what was theirs. Our inheritance is waiting on us. And we're just too busy crying and sitting around and thinking that we know better or this and that. The promised land in the Old Testament is a spiritual thing now. We don't have a promised land set aside for us. I mean, we have heaven, but as far as what we're traveling towards, it's something in our inheritance. Jesus called it our inheritance. But we have to allow ourselves the opportunity to get it. We're too busy getting in our own way and telling ourselves what we can do that we rob ourselves of what God has in store for us. We have to realize that there are no special people with God. You know, God doesn't love you more than he loves me. You may love him more than I love him. And that may make me think that he loves you more. But it's really your love for him that can be deeper. He loved us so much that he gave his only begotten son. Okay. So how much do I love him? What am I giving God? Am I giving God my all? Am I dropping everything and going outside? Well, these priests didn't want to go stand in the middle of the river. The Jordan was not known for being very clean. So they didn't want to just bring the Ark of the Covenant out in the middle of the river. That didn't make no sense to them, but instead they decided to do it. And they went outside of themselves and got outside their comfort zone and went out there and did what the Lord said. And when they did that and they submitted themselves to the word, miraculous things happened. I'm going to get off here, but I hope that who is supposed to hear this heard it. And like I said, remember this. As God was with Moses, so is he with us. As God was with David, so is he with us. And as God was with Paul, so is he with us. He hadn't changed. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so we can think about, well, why ain't he doing this or why ain't he doing that? Well, what am I doing? What am I doing for him? How am I expressing my love for him? Don't worry about what he's doing. Worry about how I'm expressing my love for him. That's what we need to be worried about. When we worry about these things and we start putting God first, the miraculous will happen. I've seen people healed. I've seen cancer gone. I've seen jobs received. I've seen anything, and I've still seen people write it off. You can see the miraculous every day and write it off. So, love God. Obey God. Because he is the same here. That's what these Israelites had to receive and Joshua had to receive. That he is the same. He is the same. He hadn't changed 40 years ago when people was getting slain in the spirit and boys' legs was turning around in their hips and jumping up and running the aisles. He ain't changed. He's still the same. And we keep looking for this revival. How are we preparing for the revival? How are we making a way for the revival? Bless y'all.